We are on our fourth program of a five-part series on the holy season of Advent. We've talked about the Advent season from the perspective of the fast, because it is a fast in the Orthodox Church from November 15th until December 25th. We've talked about it from the perspective of the parties and the preparations that the world makes, from the perspective of gift buying and gift giving. What else do we think about when we consider this part of the year, when we consider those days that are leading up to Christmas? Well, I think that as I remember my youth, as I remember growing up in my family, the most important part for getting ready for Christmas for all of us as a family was decorating the house. We always cut down a fresh Christmas tree. We dragged it into the house. Of course, my mother didn't like that. She was standing there with a vacuum cleaner and everything, and we'd get it set up and in the thing and make sure it had water and get it into its place and everything like that. And then was a trip up to the attic. We would go up and bring down these cardboard boxes. They're probably still at my parents' house. My father used to get a turkey on Christmas and Thanksgiving from his union, and the turkey always came in a cardboard box, and so he had saved these cardboard boxes, and that's what we put the Christmas decorations in. Of course, after a while, we didn't need to save the cardboard boxes anymore because we never got any new Christmas decorations. We never, my parents thought that purchasing Christmas decorations was, somehow wrong. You got Christmas decorations from your family, and Christmas decorations were handed down. That's the only way you could get them. And so they had all of these Christmas decorations in these boxes that turkeys had come in, and we brought them all down from the attic, and we opened them all up. And there were three kinds of Christmas decorations in our family. There's the outside Christmas decorations, which consisted of lights and various other things. Then there's the inside Christmas decorations, little Santa Claus candles and things like this that we set around the house. And then there was, of course, the Christmas tree decorations, which consisted of the little balls and the glass balls that, whenever we would open it up, they wouldn't let me nearby because you're going to break them, and be very careful, and that's very old. That was from your grandmother, and the all of those things. We would decorate the house for Christmas. Now, I have to say that there was never as wonderful a feeling that I had about that house that I grew up in as when it was decorated for Christmas. It just seemed like everything was warm and calm and full of life. It was just a wonderful place to be during that Christmas season when it was decorated. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine, this is a story I was told very recently. A friend of mine went to visit a family, and the family, this was in July. He visited this family, and the family's house was decorated for Christmas, including a Christmas tree. And they had things all around their house for Christmas. And so he was sitting and talking. He's a priest, and he was visiting this family. And he was sitting and talking with them. And then after a while, he said to them, "Why is your house decorated for Christmas?" He's thinking to himself, do they know it's July? Do they know this was a family that had come from another country? They'd been in the United States for some time, but he said, "Why is your house decorated for Christmas?" And the woman said, "We just love the feeling. It was such a wonderful feeling at Christmas time, and the house looks so good when it's decorated for Christmas that we decided to leave it up all year long." Can you imagine that? I can't imagine that. Maybe there are some people who can imagine it. I think there are some people in my neighborhood who can imagine it because they leave their Christmas decorations up, into March, some of them into April. It's, I don't know, it gives me the willies. I don't know, there's something about that. And I think if you put your Christmas decorations up on the outside of your house and you're too lazy to take them down, well then it looks kind of weird, with the Christmas decorations up on the outside of the house. But why would you continue to light up the lights? And we're getting off track here. We're not talking about Advent. We're talking about how I'm uncomfortable with people that leave their decorations up. But nevertheless, decorating for Christmas is one of those things that no matter what was going on in my life, I love to do it. I would, when I was at college, of course, I wasn't at college at Christmas. So, and when it came time toward the end of the semester, I never had time really to decorate my room or anything, or I didn't want to decorate my room. I wanted to go home and decorate my home. But when I was in graduate school, even though, we didn't have very much and stuff like that, we still decorated our home for Christmas, because if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're alone, or if you're with your family, if you're young, you're old, if you're busy, you're not busy, you still want to decorate for Christmas. And it has to do with the feeling that it brings, with the joy that it brings, really it has to do with the preparation that it brings, with the preparation that it means as you come up to this holy season. We prepare by decorating. We prepare for a visitor to our home by cleaning our home, by setting up nice things around our home. We prepare for a great event. We prepare for various things by making the space that we live in and the space that we use beautiful in order to have it reflect our expectation. And so it is with Advent. We're preparing for Christ. We're preparing for His coming, and so we decorate. So as we come to this fourth program, this fourth week of Lent, of Advent, of this fast, let's not only decorate our homes, but let's let that decoration be a reflection of our hearts as well, in preparation for the coming of the King, of the Savior, the Lord of this world. Let's clean and straighten things up in here as well as in our homes, and put in prominent places the beautiful things that have been handed down to us from generations past. I want to read one of the troparia for the Nativity, for the hours of the Nativity. This is a service that we do on the 24th, as long as the 24th is not a Sunday. We sing these particular services, and this is one of the hymns. When the supersensual hosts beheld thy mystery before thy birth, O Lord, they were struck with surprise. For thou who didst adorn the heavens with stars was pleased to become like a babe, to lie in a manger for beasts, O thou Almighty One, in whose grasp are all the regions of the earth. For by thy dispensation thy compassion was made known, O Christ, and thy great mercy, wherefore glory to thee. What does it talk about? It talks about how God decorated the heavens, how He laid out everything for us. He laid out the stars and everything. And that same person who did all of that was lying in the manger. So it is with us. As we decorate our homes, we also prepare ourselves to receive that child lying in the manger. We also prepare ourselves for the great gift of salvation that God has sent us in Jesus Christ. So in our Advent reflections for today, we're going to consider, first of all, St. Nicholas. We didn't get to in the last program, so we'll begin with St. Nicholas. The feast of the Conception of the Theotokos, one of my favorite feasts, on the 9th of December, and the life of St. Daniel the Stylite, celebrated on the 11th of December. At least I hope we'll have time to look at all of those. First of all, St. Nicholas. Now, in the last program, we ended by talking about St. Barbara. She was a 3rd century saint. St. Nicholas is likewise a 3rd century saint. St. Barbara was born into a family, pagan family, and so she suffered martyrdom because of it. But St. Nicholas was born into a Christian family, of very pious parents who raised him in the faith. When his parents died, now they were very, very wealthy. When his parents died, St. Nicholas gave away all that he had to the poor. And this started his life of always being generous with whatever he had, with always having compassion for the poor, with always a concern for the needy. That was exhibited very early in his life when his parents died and he gave away the fortune to help the needy of his community. He became known not only for his generosity, but also for performing miracles, including, on more than one occasion, calming storms on the seas. This is why he's known as the patron saint of sailors, of fishermen, of anybody who works on the water. He is known as the patron saint of these occupations. He was chosen in time to become the bishop of Myra, the city of Myra in Lycia, by the people, and spent his whole life ministering to them. He spent time in prison as well because of persecution. He was thrown in prisons because of his faith, and later on he was present in spite of the fact that he was not an educated, particularly educated. He was present at the First Ecumenical Council and was a leading defender of the Orthodox faith. Now, the reason I mention St. Nicholas, of course, is because of the traditions that have grown up around him and have made him into the thing that we call Santa Claus. But the real St. Nicholas was not fat. He did not dress in red. He lived in an area of the world that was very hot. He was not married. There was no Mrs. Claus. And I think it's a great disservice to his memory, because St. Nicholas was such a powerful ascetic, was a powerful bishop, was a defender of the faith, suffered because of his faith when he was in prison. He was a miracle worker. I mean, he had all of these fantastic qualities that can inspire us and help us in our own lives. And yet for most people, if you say the word St. Nicholas, the first thing they think of is, Kris Kringle or Santa Claus or something like that. And this is a very unfortunate thing. So I personally, whenever we come to this time of year, I really love to remember St. Nicholas and talk about him. We have a St. Nicholas celebration in my church where the children all come together, because in the West, of course, he's known as a patron saint of children. The children all come together and we have a celebration, and then we remember the life of St. Nicholas every year. Let's move on to another celebration, another feast day that happens during the time of Advent, and that is the feast day of the conception of the Theotokos. Mary, the mother of Jesus, her parents were named Joachim and Anna, and they were very old and childless. They were very faithful people, but they were old and they had no children. But in spite of the fact that they continued to get older and older and older and older, they continued to pray to God that He would give them a child. Even when it came to the point beyond the time that Anna could bear a child or Joachim could be a father, they continued to pray. Now, this is, of course, before the birth of St. John the Baptist. So, I mean, they didn't have that inspiration of St. John the Baptist. But Joachim and Anne continued to pray. And finally, at one point, they were separated from each other. They were some distance from one another. But at the same point, they both received a vision, a word from God telling them that they would be parents of a girl, and that this girl would carry within herself the Lord of the universe, that she would, as a virgin, give birth to the Savior of the world. Now, Joachim then went home. I mean, because obviously he's received this word that his wife is going to conceive, so he made his way home. Now, I say that because that's a very important point. It's especially important point in Orthodox theology. Roman Catholic theology is a little bit different on this point, but for Orthodox theology, what happened was Joachim and Anne were intimate with one another so that the conception of the Theotokos took place. And this is celebrated here on this day, on the 9th of December. The icons for this particular feast is an icon of Saints Joachim and Anne hugging one another. The reason that I emphasize this is because this is a feast day, the conception of the Theotokos, that emphasizes the holiness and the plan of God in the physical intimacy of Joachim and Anna. You see, in this feast, the conception of the Theotokos, we are preparing for the nativity of Christ. We're preparing for Christmas as we see in this act the Theotokos is conceived in the womb. Later on, she'll be born. Then there's her presentation in the temple, and then we come to her, the Annunciation, when the angel tells her that she's going to be the mother of Jesus, and so on. So in a way, this is like the beginning of a whole string of events that leads to the celebration of Christmas. And how does that begin? It begins when Joachim and Anne hear from the Lord that they are going to be parents, and they quickly came together and conceived the Theotokos. I mention this because it shows us how it is that God sanctifies every aspect of our lives. The body, the eating, the intimacy that we have, every single aspect of our lives is blessed by God and is especially important for us during this Christmas season, if you will, at the Feast of the Nativity, because God came in the flesh at this point to show us that it isn't like the flesh is bad and the spirit is good and you should avoid the flesh and go for the spirit. And I'm talking the flesh in terms of the physical aspect of life. No, God blesses both. God blesses us in no matter what we do. The feast of the conception of the Theotokos is the most beautiful feast, especially for married people, to tell them that God can use them. God can make them holy. That God can use their ability to bring forth a family for His good, for His end, and for His will. Well, we have a couple minutes left, and we're going to come to the feast day of one of the very unusual saints of the Church, the feast of St. Daniel the Stylite on the 11th of December. Stylite, the word means a pillar saint. And a pillar saint is a friend of mine occasionally says it's like a sanctified pole sitter. These were people who lived up in the air on pillars and stayed there all the time as their ascetic discipline. This was started by St. Simeon the Stylite, who began actually on a very small pillar, and then his pillars got progressively higher as he became more and more popular as a place of pilgrimage, as he became more well known as a great spiritual advisor, a great spiritual father. St. Simeon is celebrated on September 1st. Now we're talking today about the feast day on December 11th of St. Daniel the Stylite. St. Daniel is really from the second generation of Stylites. He knew St. Simeon the Stylite. St. Daniel was part of a monastery from a very, very early age near Constantinople, and he had the opportunity at one point to go visit Saint Simeon the Stylite. Now, at that time, there were people who are probably reacting the way some of you are reacting when you hear about the pillar saints, and that is, what? You know, this sounds crazy. People up on a pillar? How is it that they achieve holiness by being up on a pillar? How is it that they spread the word of God? How is it that they are helpful at all to the kingdom by climbing up on a pillar and living up there in the air? It doesn't make any sense at all. You know, this isn't something that we would just say today, some people would just say today, but it was said way back at the time of St. Simeon. St. Simeon experienced a lot of persecution from Christians because they didn't understand the ascesis, the sacrifice to which God had called him. Okay, so a group of monks took a trip from the monastery where St. Daniel was, and they went to see St. Simeon the Stylite. And I think that, even though it's not in the story, I would imagine that some of the monks thought that this was a little strange. And, you know, maybe they were even, you know, making a little fun of St. Simeon as they went along. But when they arrived at the pillar, as they were standing at the base of the pillar, something of the overwhelming holiness of this saint became apparent to them, and they were afraid. They were afraid of him. And so they found a ladder and put it up against the pillar in order for them to go up and get the saint's blessing, and none of them would go up except for St. Daniel the Stylite. He went up there and actually asked for the blessing of St. Simeon, and in a way really at that point became a disciple of St. Simeon. Even though he didn't stay there, later on he stayed with St. Simeon for an extended period of time. But at that point he didn't stay there, but he became very taken with the ascetic discipline of St. Simeon. Later on, he was going on a trip to Constantinople, and he stopped at a pagan temple. It was abandoned, and he was praying there, as was sometimes the case that a Christian monk would go and pray for the release of demons, for the destruction of demons at a pagan temple, even if it was a former pagan temple, because indeed the spiritual energy that is created at these places sometimes lasts for years and years and years, even though the place is abandoned. St. Daniel did this, and when he went there, he was told by God to stay there. And so he did. He ended up staying there in this former pagan temple. It was ruins. And in time, people heard about him. And as was often the case, people came to see him, to ask for his advice, to ask for his prayers, to confess their sins, and so on. He became extremely famous. Now, he was some distance outside of Constantinople, and there was a disciple of St. Simeon, the original pillar saint, the original stylite, that when Saint Simeon died, he had a part of Saint Simeon's clothing that he was going to take to the emperor. He couldn't get in to see the emperor, and the Lord told him to take it to Saint Daniel. So he took it to Saint Daniel, and when he handed it to Saint Daniel took it, walked out of his place, went into the city of Constantinople, went up on a pillar, and began to do exactly the same thing that Saint Simeon had done. He became a pillar saint. He became extremely famous. There was lots and lots of people came to visit him. He influenced patriarchs. He influenced emperors. As a matter of fact, there was one emperor that built a palace near him so that he could be close by and visit him frequently with his family and with his guests and so on. There was also a big thing like a hotel almost, built near Saint Daniel for all the people that were traveling from all the parts of the world to come and see him. During an ice storm, for instance, I like to tell this story because it tells us the severe ascetic discipline that these people were involved with. During an ice storm, there was a windstorm going on, and the wind actually blew St. Daniel's clothes away. His robe blew off of him, and he was laying on the pillar, hanging on for dear life. The next morning, the monks climbed up to the top of his disciples climbed up to the top of the pillar, and they found him caked in ice, and they had to thaw him out with some hot water and bring him back, revive him. And the emperor decreed at that point that a little structure would be built up there to keep St. Daniel from dying from exposure to the elements. Now, St. Daniel, why is it important that we celebrate the memory of St. Daniel during Advent, or why is it important that we specifically think about St. Daniel during Advent? Well, I think that sometimes when I am telling people that I'm fasting during Advent, that I'm not going to go to parties, and that if I do go to parties, I'm not going to eat anything that's non-fasting food, and I'm not going to drink anything. That when I tell people that, sometimes they think, why is this? Why go crazy with this whole thing? And really, I begin to see that the ways of the Lord are sometimes very different than the ways of this fallen world. Can we really understand the ascetic discipline of St. Daniel, what he went through, or why he did? Why it was that the Lord called him to do that? I don't know. I can't. The more I think about St. Simeon, St. Daniel, all those pillar saints, the more I think about them, the more I wonder, what is it that I'm missing? What is it that's different about me than them? Let's consider that same thing as relates to this time of the year. As we prepare for the Feast of the Nativity, let's remember what God is calling us to and how it is that He desires that we would prepare for His coming. Well, we come to the end of our fourth program in our 5-part series on the holy season of Advent, and I hope you can join us again next week on Tradition Today.